We've got our western zone has a potential IOCG mineralization style, which is known for late stage and fluid enrichment for essentially the pegmatites that are already placed. And so it could be quite exciting. And we've got some major companies that are north of us, that being Alpha Energy and Paladin Energy, which have already been able to prove out their resources. And so we're kind of looking to do the same thing. And I think we're in a favorable jurisdiction to do so.
Nuclear is making a comeback. There's definitely some wins for nuclear with the Trump presidency, but just generally people are starting to see that the technology is starting to catch up. So uranium, we think, is going to pop in the next few years. How major a role do you see it playing in our energy future, taking all things into account? You know, we have wind, we have solar, we have oil and gas. Where does nuclear sit in that, and how important will it be in the coming years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to play an incredibly important role heading into the future. Like there's been a continued shift towards uranium and nuclear power. It's by far the highest capacity factor of any other energy source, producing maximum power more than 92% of the time during the year, which is nearly 2 times more than natural gas and coal and 3 times more than wind and solar. You know, it's no coincidence that as AI continues to grow and with the demand for data centers, that Microsoft made a deal with Constellation Energy to restart a portion of 3 Mile Island nuclear plant in the US, securing rights to the energy for the next 20 years. I mean, that was arguably the largest natural disaster as far as nuclear power is concerned in US history. And the fact that that's now coming back online, I think, is just reinforcing that this shift is real and it's going to continue. And then on top of that, you've got Google and Amazon that just closed other major deals in the uranium space. So I really don't see this trend stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, we did a little video on this. Google, Microsoft, they got to power the data centers, and we think that might put a lot of pressure on their kind of local municipalities and the governments, especially in the US, but we think Australia as well. I think as the technology becomes a bit more known to the public, because, you know, you have Fukushima, you have Hiroshima, you have these different events that happen, which create this kind of cloud of doubt. But I think the technology is incredible at the moment. So I think uranium's going to have a big decade, massive decade. In fact, Trump just got in. We're in Australia, but we definitely felt like the political fatigue over here. How do you feel a Trump presidency might impact the clean energy shift and demand for critical minerals in the States and globally?
Yeah, I mean, I think the incoming motto right now is drill, baby, drill. You know, I do think that Trump will try to stick to his mandate of increased oil and natural gas production. However, you know, to completely repeal things like the Inflation Reduction Act goes beyond just the power of the president, right? Like you have to have lawmakers and, just other advocates in other states that have to support that. So it's not an easy transition to just, cut it all together. So it's not going to be an immediate transition. As well, you have, other major states such as California, New York, Washington, which all have enacted strong policies, and at the end of the day, perhaps for 4 years, it means greater emphasis of supplies on critical minerals will come from countries such as Canada, which, can potentially benefit SAGA, and our suite of critical mineral projects in our portfolio. So at the end of the day, I'm not overall, concerned. And who knows, right? Like he puts forth these items during his presidency, and that we'll see how it all plays out.
Let's talk SAGA more specifically now. Can you describe what SAGA does, how you fit into this kind of trend, this clean energy transition trend, and then we'll talk about the individual properties and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. So SAGA Metals, we're a diversified critical mineral company. We've got 4 properties in Canada, 1 in Quebec and 3 in Labrador. We're focused on uranium, lithium, titanium, vanadium, and high purity iron ore. It might seem a little bit confusing as to why we're going after different critical minerals, but I think that the one unique aspect of these critical minerals is that they have a lot of interconnection in downstream real world applications, and so a lot of these trends that are forthcoming and kind of continuing to grow, whether it's in uranium space or lithium space or the vanadium space, there is that interconnectedness. And I think that finding quality projects within these very favorable jurisdictions, being Quebec and Labrador, and in Canada, it's just, vital in terms of finding these quality projects and being able to shore up supplies and being able to contribute to, this global green energy shift. And I think we have the right mix to do that. And it gives people a bit of a broader or like an easier approach to get into some of these different critical minerals. We're not just the uranium company. We're not just the lithium company. You have a little bit of diversification there. So I think that's healthy.
A question on vanadium. I don't know much about vanadium. What is vanadium used for typically in the market?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a strength there for steel, right? It's a very stable element, a very stable metal. And so it's got applications in construction, aerospace, military, nuclear power plants. It's currently being developed and being utilized by a company, in the US as a replacement for nickel cobalt in, the cathodes for lithium ion batteries. So, it's not something that people are super familiar with. However, the demand for vanadium is supposed to more than double, by 2030. And so again, I think it's a critical mineral that's not going anywhere anytime soon, just given its, diversification within its own, use cases.
You mentioned your projects. You got the 4 projects across Quebec and Labrador. These are obviously very mineral rich areas. I just keen to know, what makes your properties unique, but then also just to understand the landscape for retail investors who are looking at Canada as Australia is also a very mineral rich country, just to get a kind of aerial view on what Canada has to offer broadly. So maybe we start with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's no surprise that Canada has an abundance of resources, whether it be minerals or timber or natural gas or oil itself. The one unique aspect I think is that when you're trying to find quality, critical mineral projects in Canada, it doesn't have those decades worth of historical information like you might have with, say, gold. And so there's kind of this unique opportunity where the old adage was, where do you find a mine? You find it next to another mine. Well, there isn't a significant amount of mines for critical minerals, in Canada and just other quality jurisdictions throughout the world. So I think that for us, we find that, Canada presents itself as a very unique opportunity to find these quality projects in these specific provinces like Quebec and Labrador that we find ourselves. And we can do so by just sheerly doing our due diligence and like having management sit down and run through assessment reports and run through the geological data that some of these provinces, have been able to put together over the years and keep our cost of acquisition low, right? We're not having to go to every single prospector that's out there trying to, make deals on these properties. Like in some cases, we've actually been able to stake our projects directly from the government. And that's our uranium property, right? So we own that 100% outright. I mean, we own all of our projects 100% outright, but there's no royalty associated with the uranium project as an example. And that's just quite simply because some of these projects are just not known to everybody.
So in terms of what's the one project you're most excited about across Quebec and Labrador? What's the one that gets you going, gets you up in the morning going, wow, this is just amazing? And what are the results of that particular project?
Yeah. I mean, it's, as you ask that question, I actually find it kind of hard to pinpoint exactly one. I mean, of course, our main flagship project as a company is the uranium project. And I think that the potential of that project as our flagship project, is incredible. But, really when I sit back and I look at the suite of the projects that we have, the core focus was, again, doing the due diligence to suss out and find projects and stake claims on ground that have the necessary geology, or at least looked or observed to have the necessary geology to host the ingredients to find these minerals. And as we dig through historical data that might be associated with some of the projects, or after completing some of the projects, field programs that we already have done on our projects, we are starting to get those results that is proving out that these projects do have what it is that we're going after, whether it be uranium, titanium, vanadium. And so that in and of itself is quite exciting. But, from a flagship project perspective, that is our uranium project. And, we've got an 18-kilometer strike. We've got, our Western zone has a potential IOCG mineralization style, and, which is known for late stage and fluid enrichment for essentially the pegmatites that are already in place. And so it could be quite exciting. And we've got some major companies that are north of us, that being Alpha Energy and Paladin Energy, which have already been able to prove out their resources. And so we're kind of looking to do the same thing. And I think we're in a favorable jurisdiction to do so.
Interesting. How do you, so phase 1 is exploration. I guess I would love to hear from you, like, how does that work? You find the property, and you guys have a certain process for finding the property, and then you go into this kind of phase of like pulling out and seeing what's there. And then there's probably the third phase, which is actual digging and mining and all of that. Can you just give me the layman's overview, like I'm 5 years old, how that works from finding the actual property to, what you just kind of described then, which is assessing it. And then what would be the third stage? Like up for Saga Metals, is it that you guys do it yourself? You sell that property off to a Rio Tinto? Like how does that full kind of the full whack look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that each company could technically do this process differently. It just depends on what you're willing to pay, right? It's if you want a project that already has drill results and already has some indication of a resource, you can acquire that. You can build your whole company around that, but it's going to cost you more because someone else had to do that work to get that project to that level to de-risk it. So for us, we feel that our differentiating factor is that we are sussing out these early stage projects that are in areas that are underexplored, that have the potential to host what it is that we're going after. Again, we can keep our cost of acquisition low. As a public company, it's super important to keep your share structure tight and, be able to manage your float properly, because at the end of the day, if you're trading at 5 cents, pretty hard to recapitalize your company. If you're creating value and building your market capitalization as you grow, raising more money and moving these projects forward becomes an easier thing to accomplish. And so, our mandate, or how we've done this again, is sussing out and finding these areas that are underexplored. We do the necessary due diligence to make sure that they do have the right ingredients to host what it is that we're looking to go after. Then, of course, you have to go through your verification validation phase, where you actually start to get those anomalous results from the rock samples or soil samples that you take on the property, so you can go, yeah, okay, we're on the right track. And the biggest thing here is that you don't want to drill too early, because the problem is that your property could have something exciting on it. You don't have the ability to see through the ground and know exactly how it's formed over billions of years. You got to take your time to really hone in and pinpoint where you want to put that drill. And so for our uranium project, as an example, we've done that. Fortunately for us, there was a previous company back in 2006 that had claims within our boundary, and they did put about $4 million worth of work into it. So we had that benefit. Now, unfortunately for them, they kind of went through some series of unfortunate events. They had the '08 financial crisis. Labrador put a short moratorium on uranium. They'd never seen such an influx in uranium exploration during 2006 to 2008. So they had to put a moratorium on to develop their policies, talk to local communities, make sure that they wanted this in the province in terms of exploration and mining. And so coming out of that in 2011, they were able to shore up those policies, and they removed the moratorium. However, then you had the Fukushima crisis and uranium crisis hit bottom. So fast forward, from that point, about 13 years to now, we were able to stake this ground completely ourselves, like as I mentioned previously, from the government. And so we're able to take that data, go to the field this past summer, and just further validate that what they saw on the ground is what we're seeing on the ground. And we've honed in on those drill targets. And so coming out in January here in 2025, we're going to start that drill program, and we're going to start in that western zone and build from there. And then that's kind of when you start to get those initial drill results that hopefully signifies that you're heading in the right direction. You can start to make some internal calculations as to what a resource looks like, raise more money, continue to drill, infill drill, and build up your actual resource where you can put it into a 43-101 technical report and then advance it there. And they basically get it to a point where it's de-risked enough that you can then, to your point, go to a major and have conversations with some of these other companies to, solicit essentially a sale or a JV or whatever that might be. We've already proven as management that we're capable of doing that. We touch on this a bit later, but we did secure a partnership with Rio Tinto and Rio Tinto Exploration Canada on our lithium property in James Bay. And so, it's kind of a bit of a foreshadow that we are a proactive management group, and we are going to engage and have these conversations with these companies as we move the projects through their stages of exploration.
For sure. And the Rio Tinto partnerships, one of the things that stood out to me, I thought was really, really interesting and exciting. But do you want to talk to me a little bit about that and then your lithium project? So what does that partnership entail? What does it mean for the company? And then a bit about the lithium project and where you guys are on that side of things.
And so, just to kind of give a little bit of the lay of the land in terms of what that project looks like. So we've got just over 65,000 hectares in the eastern part of James Bay. And so if you're not familiar with it, you've got Patriot Battery Metals, which is, arguably currently has the largest resource estimate in James Bay. And then moving further to the east, about 90 kilometers, you've got Winsome's Adina project. They've got a 78 million ton resource. We are along strike with Winsome Resources. So Rio Tinto has another partnership with another company on their Gallon 8 project. And then that continues through Loyal Lithium and then into Saga's Brent. So about a year ago, we put the necessary expenditures into a field program to determine, what was going on this property. Again, Quebec, known for more of your gold and platinum group metals and things like that, never really known for lithium, just no one had explored for it. And so there isn't that historical data. So most of these projects that are coming forth are requiring, very grassroots exploration. And so we put that necessary work in the summer of 2023. We put a data room together. And as some other companies like Winsome and Loyal Lithium were hitting close to our property, that's when we started to have conversations with those neighbors to say, hey, you know what, this is Saga, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, and this is the data that we have on our property. And that led to, conversations with Rio Tinto. And in July of this past summer, we announced our 2-stage option earn-in agreement with Rio Tinto for up to $44 million to be spent in the ground for them to earn 75% of our legacy lithium project. That includes payments of $700,000 to our treasury, paid out over a series of tranches. And so, what that does is that covers 34,000 hectares of the total package of 65. The other 31,000 hectares that's contiguous to the legacy lithium property, known as the Amaro property, is still open for us to further explore. And so what that kind of means from a management strategy is that we can let Rio Tinto Exploration Canada, because they're the operators, let them work our property and allow us to focus on the uranium property. However, should lithium continue to uptick and make its way back into demand and in favor, we've got sort of that contingency plan with the Amaro project, and we can move that one slowly forward. And again, the nice thing about that property is that it has the right or the necessary ingredients to go after and try to find lithium. Of course, we still have to find it and build that reserve, but it does have the necessary elements that make it quite intriguing. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that Rio Tinto wanted to do the deal with us.
Yeah, huge validation. This is maybe slightly out of scope, but I just keen to get your take on the macro on lithium. I'm no expert at lithium at all, but I know that China obviously has big lithium reserves, as does Australia, and conversations I've been having are saying that, over the last couple of years, China's kind of been dumping lithium into the market, and it's been suppressing lithium prices, and it's not the best quality lithium either. I'm just curious whether that's something you're familiar with, and, what your take is on the kind of macro lithium market at this time.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of heard that story. And, at the end of the day, I think that lithium's here to stay. Like you got major companies, you got major countries that are all focused on this green energy transition, and lithium is a big part of that. Yes, China's done what they've done to currently suppress prices, but I don't think you're going to have major companies like Rio Tinto go and acquire a company like Arcadium for approximately $6.7 billion, instantly become the third largest producer of lithium in the world. And just some of the other macro trends that occur with lithium, if it wasn't an element that was here to stay. I think that it's depressed right now, but I think that it's going to come back, and the long-term prospects are really what people are focused on. And even Saga as a company, the benefit for us is that we don't have to worry about the short-term depression of lithium, because our deal with Rio Tinto was not based on the current depression of lithium, and that we know that they have longer term horizon with lithium in general, right? And so for us, it's not like Rio Tinto as an entity has to go and raise more money to further their exploration programs. When we sign a deal with them, one of the comforting things for us is that we know they have the money to advance the project. They don't, if they're one of those companies that has suffered a 400% decline in their market cap price from, 2 years ago, now they have to try to raise money at a much lower price. Rio doesn't have to do that. They have the money, right? And so I think that's a massive benefit for SAGA and its shareholders, that, we have that security in knowing that they'll be able to advance our project forward each year with the funds they have available.
The titanium vanadium project obviously sounds massive. Keen for you just to break that down, the potential there, what does it mean for SAGA's position in North America? Just keen to get your take on what's happening on that project.
Yeah, so we already kind of touched on the use cases for vanadium, so we won't spend any time refocusing on that. But in terms of this project, it is one of our secondary projects, but it's a very cool, unique project. And we find ourselves again in Labrador with this project. It's about 10 kilometers south of Cartwright. And the interesting thing here is that the infrastructure is amazing. We have a road that runs right into our highest mineralized zone. And if you're not familiar with Labrador, it is a bit more of a remote province in Canada on the eastern coast. And so having a project that sits on infrastructure like that is quite unique. And that was also sort of one of our internal mandates, was that it doesn't make sense to find a project that's in the middle of nowhere that's going to, even if you find something, it's going to require such an exponential capex in terms of infrastructure to move it forward. Having elements of infrastructure already in place is obviously a key factor in your ability as a company to move a project forward. And so, we have a lot of things going for us with the Radar Titanium Vanadium project. Our Chief Geological Officer, Michael Garrigan, has done an amazing job of engaging with the local communities in the area. We've hired some of them to work on our project, which has been fantastic. They're hardworking. They've spent their lives, hunting, fishing, being out in the wilderness in Labrador. And these are the perfect skills that you need for running these exploration programs. And we've been very fortunate to have them a part of the team. And at the end of the day, I had the benefit of going to that project as well as the uranium project back in September, just a couple months ago. And both projects, just seeing them in person is quite exciting and quite cool. Like, for myself, just quickly jumping back to the uranium project, to see uranophane, which is essentially the oxidization of uranium minerals within the pegmatites, right on surface, and seeing the spectrometer readings, kind of flying up on the machine was quite exciting across multiple areas of our trend. And then, switching back to the radar project, it's what you want to find is called magnetite, and that's where you're going to find your titanium and vanadium. And interestingly enough, you take a magnet pen and, you get your rock and you pull up your rock, you stick your pen to it. And depending on how strong the magnetic connection is, the pen will just free dangle off the rock. And, it's, we took little tiny pieces of rock, and you could still hold up the pen free dangling on its own. And we uncovered this, across 3 different parallel structures as I toured the property. And it's very cool. When we first got there, we parked the truck, walked maybe 2 minutes up the hill, and Michael Garrigan, showed us where they stripped out an outcrop, and you could see the layers of a textbook layered mafic intrusion right there. And so, I think the thing for people to realize with this project is that there's another project in the same geological province that runs up through Quebec and Labrador, called the Grenville province. And Strategic Resources, another publicly traded company, has a project called Blackrock. They've completed a feasibility study on their southwest pit that's, has an estimated mine life of 39 years and a net present value of just shy of $2 billion. And so, I think the potential for vanadium is there. I think that it's going to have its day in the sun as a critical mineral that's kind of shining in the spotlight. And we've got a very intriguing project that, yes, needs a lot more work for sure in terms of advancing and getting to the stage of a project like BlackRock. But again, I think we have the necessary ingredients, and we're all in our samples, we're already getting grades that are very similar, 11.1% titanium oxide and up to 0% vanadium pentoxide. So very encouraging preliminary results. And that's a secondary project that I think could be, a sneaky side project that adds tremendous value to our shareholders for sure.
Awesome. Vision for the next 5-10 years for SAGA? Is there plans to introduce new properties, or is four plenty? What's on the pipeline, or in the pipeline rather, for you guys over the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, I think that four right now definitely is plenty. You definitely don't want to take on more than you can or have bandwidth for. One thing about having these projects is that there is a certain monetary level that you have to spend each year to maintain the ownership of the claims. And so you don't want to overburden yourself with essentially that like claims overhead. And so, for us, again, I think the whole point here is to move these projects through their stages of exploration and then, determine what to do at that point in terms of the value that we've been able to bring these projects up to. And again, whether that be an outright sale or a JV with another partner, that can always open the door for more projects to come into our portfolio. And at the end of the day, our ability to find these projects and do our due diligence and go into these areas that are underexplored is not going to change. Our mandate's not going to change. And, 5-10 years from now, yes, I definitely do see some of our projects exiting, hopefully through some kind of M&A transaction or partnership. And I do see new projects coming into the fold for sure. And, look forward to what all that entails.
Amazing. Great to chat with you, Mike. It was a pleasure learning about all things uranium, titanium, vanadium, markets that I'm familiar with uranium, but the other markets not so familiar with. So just an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again for having me. Really appreciate you making time for me today.